Okay, hi, good morning. Uh, we are now in a very small workshop. It's just three of us. I would say it's a classic of organizing and managing debate societies that you always have less people than you should, and that most people are only interested in debating and doing the competitive part of the business and not the organization part. So the being just three people in this workshop is very symptomatic to this, I would agree. Uh, we will have four parts. By the way, I feel super weird talking into void like this, but I'll get used to it at one point. So if you want, you can open your cameras. You don't have to. And this session is recorded, which means that your question, etc., will also be recorded. If you have problem with being recorded, just let us know and we will stop recording when you ask your questions, or we can edit it later and cut you out from the recording. My plan was to talk about four major parts of organizing and managing debate societies, which are logistics, funding, networking, and dividing work division. But if you have any questions in any of these parts, or if you want to share an experience, because we are just three of us, I think it can work like this as well. So you just let me know. You can also type the questions into chat if you don't want to say them out loud. And also, if you want to talk about something similar, we can start a discussion as well. It doesn't have to be a very strict lecture, rather a workshop or like a joint platform to discuss. Now that we got out of the technical details, can I just ask what are the levels of experience, because it's just three people. So do you already manage and organize debate societies, or do you plan to, or you're just interested in a topic? What is the...
Um,
Hi.
Hi. So I was organizing the Technion Debate Society for 2 years, and I'm now representing the Israeli Circuit and Council. So helping out a lot with other societies.
Okay, so there's a lot of experience here, I see.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question that well. My sound was still connecting.
I haven't seen you in such a long time.
How are you?
I'm good. The question was, do you have some experience with organizing a debate society, or do you plan to organize a debate society soon? What is the level we are talking? Just to be able to...
Okay, so yeah, so obviously I have experience in debating before I moved to Turkey. But at the moment, since I've moved to a new university, Ibn Khaldun University, we've just started our debate club about 4 months ago. And it's still in a little bit disarray. And yeah, that's basically why I thought this workshop would be good for me.
Okay, great. So there's a debate society that needs organizing. Okay, so lesson number one, I can give you a short, because we in Zagreb we managed a whole new circuit, because we had a debating circuit for high schools. We had to transfer it into university debating, had to open a whole new organization. So we basically had to make circuit from scratch. So this is where my experience come from, and also because doing it for such a long time, I've noticed that the pattern of people that are organizing stuff are always the same. There is always if you have any kind of coaching track or anything, you will find the same 10 people there, because most people do not want to do this job, which is the lecture. So the first lesson from organizing a debate society is that there is usually much more work than it seems in the beginning. And the key to coming to to making this organization functional is informing yourself about the procedures. It's hard to give you direct points for this research, because in every country and in every university this stuff functions differently, but I can tell you in general what are the stuff that you need to research. There are some laws covering student organization. In some countries, all student organizations need to be registered as normal classical NGOs. In some countries, you can by In some countries, you can organize you can make your student organization directly connected to the university, so without doing the logistical part. And what is really, really important is to have some funding before you start any kind of new organization, because in general, there are a lot of costs that you kind of don't expect before you start holding debate club. So maybe opening a bank account costs some money, maybe hiring a accountant costs some money, maybe just filling out the registration forms and stuff like this will cost some money. So there is like a huge amount of stuff in general that you have to do before opening the organization. Also, there is a lot of experience in some other student organizations. So what is easier in many cases, instead of opening a whole new organization for itself, is just taking on some existing student organization like a student club or like student association, and just connecting a debate club with them, making it an activity rather than a whole thing. And in our experience, scaling down in this first phase is very useful, because at first we always want to do everything. Let's make a website, let's have meetings every day, let's rent a space, let's do this, let's organize worlds in our little debate organization next year, etc., etc. But in general, because all these things cost money, and because money is sometimes it's hard to acquire it when you're organizing a student organization in any form. It's better to start small, and then you can always make a website. But if you like commit to paying every month for some hosting, etc., it can get harder. And I've heard many stories about people trying to do very big stuff in the first year of their organization or in the beginnings, and then getting demotivated when this doesn't function. Oh, I love the recordings that this is recorded. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is funding, and I'm just gonna go through this stuff a little bit quickly. I think the most useful part is like by dividing work and working on social cohesion in the organization by far. So for funding, there are some good stuff when you're from countries. I think Israel is on the list, definitely Croatia from recent times, where debating is getting a little bit more popular. People are hearing about it. It looks good as an educational activity. It looks good to people, to companies, to university, etc. When you say our students went to Epsilon, like Oxford University, and won a prize there, or our student went to Worlds and won a prize there. So like when your circuit gets better and better and better, it's much easier to acquire funding. But what we learned the hard way is that people are really not very into funding things that you will like tournaments and workshops and proams, and these are things that are very unattractive for companies, very unattractive for even sometimes universities to fund, because it always seems to them that they will have to do more work than you say to them, because like, okay, there's some event happening, people are coming, people are leaving, etc., etc. What is the responsibility behind it? And the easy thing to fund is going to tournaments, especially after like we had a great Zagreb team in recent years, winning a lot of stuff and traveling a lot, and it was much easier for us to acquire funding even for different teams when we had them, because we had this like focal point, like look at these boys, you paid for them to go to, I don't know, Cape Town, or you paid for them to go to Novi Sad, they won, they went into finals, they went into semis, etc. It became like a face behind our fundraising program, and because of them we got a lot of money actually for the other teams that maybe didn't win anything or didn't even break, but just because we were all in the same club, and oh, look at the Zagreb debating, it gets easier. Also, we found out that there is a lot of stuff that you can get for free actually. In terms of space, website hosting, in terms of promoting, etc. We are currently like talking to many other student organizations, and they're willing in many cases to give their services for free or for very little money. For example, there is an NGO in Croatia that, or like they do a free website for non-profit business. There is our space in which we do our meetings and sometimes even tournaments is like a youth center that has a lot of free time, and other NGO in which me and my friend from the organization are working has a good relationship with them. So over that we got a space one time a week, etc., etc. So there is a many stuff that that you can get for free, which is important because then in the beginning when you're organizing, you can try and research as much of them, so you don't have to spend so much money. Okay. Do you have any questions for now, or like notes or something?
I just wanted to ask, like, because our biggest issue is like being a financial entity. I mean, like the whole Israeli circuit. So how are you doing this? Are you like an NGO? Are you under a university? How does it work?
Okay, so we are registered as a special NGO, so we are fully autonomous in that sense. But we are also registered as the part of the student. It's Croatian bureaucracy, so bear with me for a moment. But there's like a register of student organizations, which covers all the NGOs that that work with students in some way, and it's university has this base. So we are both like a normal NGO and a student organization by itself. The easy thing with Zagreb is that by the time we started, it was just like 7 people in Zagreb doing student debate, and then 5 more in Split and 2 more in Rijeka. So in terms of connecting all of this, we didn't have much problems because we were in the same room for 3 days in the week at least. But now when we are getting bigger, it becomes like a bigger problem. So this is what I'm going to talk about in networking and stuff. But like for the like beginning, especially I think in Israel, because you have so much institutions and every university basically has a debate club, putting it all over one entity can be harder. We have another level, debating in Croatia in high school, when there is like a roof organization, umbrella organization that's called Croatian Debate Society, and they basically organize and how do you say, they manage all high school and elementary school debating clubs in Croatia. But it's easy for them because they don't really have to, these debate clubs are not real organizations. These are just some people saying, hey, we're a debate club now, it's 3 of us. So the organizing of all that is simpler. When it comes to student debate, we had some like ideas about opening some kind of umbrella organization for student debate in Croatia, so it gets easier. But we like after researching and like thinking about it a bit, it just seemed logical on first, but it isn't actually, because in student debating most of things function via universities and IVs. So you don't apply to, like in world schools, you apply to worlds as Croatia. You cannot apply like 16 gymnasium worlds team or like Rijeka's worlds team. And in UDC and WDC, we apply as institutions. So it makes more sense that our clubs are connected to faculties or universities rather than having one umbrella organization that will have to divide in the end again. That opens some other problems, of course, but like we found out that it's still easy for us because of the numbers to like have it like this. But there's also another problem, and for example, that's maybe useful for you as a country rep and stuff. And we also had like this talk about how are we going to vote at councils, because if we don't have an umbrella organization, then we don't have one person that represents us. And then it's very hard to like decide who will this person be and what will they decide. We are lucky that because we are centered in Zagreb, other debate organizations from Croatia don't really have much motivation to participate in councils, etc. So Zagreb kind of gets monopoly in making decisions. Now they're going to hate me after they publish this online, but in general, so just because no one cares about this stuff, we have this. But when you have a lot of organizations, then you have to have some kind of caucus, etc. I know in Turkey, they organized it like this. They have a meeting, or like it's about more of a WhatsApp group, basically with 10 people in it. And every university has its own representative, like president of the university debate club. And then they all come together in this body that has no president to do something similar.
Yeah, this is what we have. So we have, each society has like a president, and then they vote for like a representative, and the representative is the one who's like managing the little like Israeli council, and is the representative to the like European or World Council.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of an extra work, to be fair, but everything is. So does it work like in terms of, let's say, people feeling that they're represented? Do you think it's
I think it works mostly because we keep like an open communication line between all the presidents of the societies. I hope, at least. It's recorded and people might be like, but we actually have like a meeting next week, so
okay.
I'll know better after.
Let me know how it went. Yeah, so that's always the problem, and of course it's same with everything. When you're still small, it's much easier. People always feel represented, and then when you get bigger and bigger, it's very important to keep the core some kind of connected to this. So we can like move directly to this topic, which is basically about networking and keeping the organization in touch. There are, I would say, two major parts to this. There's like formal and informal cohesion in the NGO and in the club, let's say. And the problem with students in general, like university students, is that they're much harder to organize than children, and also much harder to organize than adults, because there's like this. I'm not saying they're not adults, but I kind of am in most cases, because even though you feel very adult when you're 18 or like 20, in general you are probably not. And this creates a kind of a problematic position for the person who will be in charge, because you are not allowed to literally like school them like you would do if you would coach a high school debate club or elementary school debate club. But in the same time, you cannot act as if they're adults, because then everything will go poof. You'll just leave them, and people will stop working, not being responsible, fight, make kind of cliques, this all the problems. And I think we had a bit of a bumpy ride in Zagreb with finding this balance, and then the balance gets harder the more people you include. So you have this always shifts of generation, so there are new younger people coming in, older people moving to a certain point, there are groups forming, there are a lot of things that like you need to like take into consideration, including like how are people behaving in between themselves at tournaments. So we thought that what will really help us is going to be like this workshops and tournaments and these formal gatherings, and we will organize more noob tournaments, more pro-am tournaments, etc. People will get together, we will connect generations, it will work out, it will be great. In reality, it didn't help us so much. I'm not saying that like tournaments are really important for the circuit to get to know each other, and having tournaments in your local language is, I would say, one of the best tactics. It's great for us also because in the region we can also communicate in the same language. So like the Serbian debaters can come, or from Bosnia, or even some Slovenians that can communicate in Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, whatever. So it's very practical for us to like have these local tournaments, to have the circuit get to know each other. We always invite people from other cities in Croatia, like, yay, come together. You can introduce members of the different clubs, you have socials, it's great. But in the same time, because tournaments are such a competitive, even this like random new tournaments in local language are very competitive places, because debaters by nature are very competitive people. Sometimes you get actually more conflict and division from the tournaments than you get cohesion. So we were thinking a lot about what can we do in order to prevent it. So we started having more informal events, and I think this was really much more helpful. It's depending on the size of the organization, of course, depends the type of the informal event you can have. But because we were I think around 40 people in the NGO by that time, we had this game night, and I thought, okay, it will be fun, we'll play some games, it will be like 2 hours and everyone will leave home. And in the end we had to kick people out at 2 in the morning. They were still playing games in very weird combinations of people you would never imagine sitting together at the same table. So doing stuff like this actually was much more helpful, because then you don't have to do any you as a managing person. You don't have to do anything but just literally set up games and let people connect by themselves. While in the tournament, you always have to kind of manage this socializing part, like are we having socials, what are we doing, you know, there's always some kind of extra pressure. And also like this type of like picnics, game nights, I don't know, volleyball tournaments, blah blah blah, they're give something, they give to people something that's not debating. Because I would say, like, if you take just debating, then you will naturally have a lot of divisions, because people always fight about debating, and debate itself is the act of arguing. So when you talk about arguing, you tend to argue, if that makes sense. But if you give them something else to think about, like a ball or any kind of game or anything, there you have much more chances that they will stop thinking about debating for 10 minutes and like understand that they can connect to other people. But it's very, very important to keep the level of social cohesion, because in general, you know, clubs and everything, they tend to fall apart very quickly, because there is always a need to have another person that will take over after someone finishes university or after someone is done. And there are like two most like scenarios. Is one, someone finished, like the person who was managing everything finishes university, no one wants to continue, everything kind of dies. And the scenario number two is a person that cannot retire from debating. Sad story, my sad story. A person cannot retire from debating because there is not, like, there's no one who would continue doing this work for them. So like, I would say like a pro tip would be, since every generation of noobs and like younger debaters that come in, to try to find some that look like they could be into organizing stuff, not only debating, and keeping them very close to you, like making it a personal thing. Like you have to take over it if you want me to love you in life, etc. Because in every other way, like expecting that it will happen spontaneously sometimes bring more harm than good.
Yeah,
but that's why
I identify.
I feel. Especially, yeah. So I think this like having some level of social cohesion, these like other events also help with this, because if you can, because like the thing that stops people from doing this, like from being in the organization, is mostly like lack of time, lack of motivation, etc. And they don't really think it's useful. That's like the thing. We tend to go to stuff without thinking who organizes. Like you go to a tournament, you just debate there, drink for a week, and you don't like ask, who managed your catering, and like who is the volunteer coordinator here. These are the stuff we don't think about actively. So in many cases, this like people don't know how much work there is behind the debate meetings they attend and like the tournaments they go and have fun to. And in order to like willing to research the work and accept some amount of work, they need to care about the organization itself, not just about debating, because caring about debating in most cases like comes to, I care about my career in debating, my debating CV, these tournaments, etc., etc. But they really need to care about the organization itself, and it helps if there is a group of people you can connect this organization. Say like, these are my friends, I went and played Cluedo with them for 2 hours, like I want to continue this, I want someone else to have the same experience as I did, and then the motivation for the work comes.
I think that for us, we try at least each year to do a pro-am tournament, which is, I think, around February, something like that. And I think for many people, this is a turning point, because like they get to be buddies with like someone who's usually really strong and well connected in the circuit, and it usually, I think, make people want to stay, even for like the social aspect, when they have someone who's like more into like the dynamics.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like this idea. So this was Matt's idea. I'm also like giving more tea, but about having random proams. We never thought about it. We also did some proams in Zagreb, But because we're a small circuit, then it's like easier to find your pro and M. Everyone just asks someone. But like doing it randomly, like people applying as you finding pro and then people applying as M's, I think can be really, really great, because then you can like find out what are the weak clubs in your circuit, or like what are the weak parts, who has less members, where there is like a problem to continue organizing debate, and then you can pair them with like the coolest person in your circuit, and like in that you will not have like this more more divisions. I want to say something a little bit about proems. Okay, I lost this thought. Maybe
It'll come back. It will come back.
Yeah, it will come back. It's a long morning. So yeah, there is like a whole bunch of things to think about it, and there's also like this unfortunate part of organizing debate societies, that you kind of have to do some stuff that you don't want, and that's manage relationships in the debate society, like not literally relationships and not literally manage, but there will be many cases where the conflict arises, and it will somehow be expected out of you to solve the conflict, or you will understand that the conflict is like ruining the society in some way, and it needs to be addressed in order for society to function normally. For example, I was completely unprepared for this role. My idea was, okay, this is like a university debate, like we're all adults, we'll just go somewhere, it will be so chill. But we had like multiple situations in which we had to have like mediation sessions, including stuff like people not communicating very basic things, like who wants to be in a room with someone, or like literally very, very basic things. So there's this like always this part, it's always useful to have someone older, like really older, not 23 older, but like maybe closer to 30 older, that like you need to have an adult. As Nika said for equity teams in last year's council, adult is needed in this kind of places, like a real adult is needed. It helps us a lot sometimes to have an age gap, you know, between generations and stuff, because it's hard, like people don't take people their own age seriously enough sometimes, and sometimes when you have potentially problematic situations in which you see that maybe other people are getting hurt, or it's not a healthy environment anymore, it becomes toxic in some ways, then you have to have someone who is a bit out of it, you know, to come and reach. So like keeping good tabs with the alumni of the organization is always good, and like using what people do, that's also very like in many senses, because that's great when you have like a big debate organization, because you will have people from a lot of areas of expertise, you know, and there will definitely be someone who can design a website. We have graphic designer, yes, that was my happiest moment when a graphic designer joined the debate club. But you know, we always have someone that is you will have a psychologist, or like even like someone who studies medicine. These are all very useful stuff in many cases. So for example, for people that maybe don't want to do work, like in general, I don't want to sit here and fill out forms for, I don't know, tax refund, but maybe they will be willing to help in some other way, which is more natural to them, like by designing something. I just have to open the air conditioner. I'm sorry, I'm melting here.
This is very important. I completely understand. I think here it's been summer for like years. It's just not stopping.
We're dying this year in Croatia. I don't know what's happening. Global warming. Sorry, my family hid the remote control from. You have to find. Close the windows, save the planet Earth. Okay. So we mostly cover like organizing and this part about social cohesion. There is also something like promoting of debating, which I think is very important, and it's actually it's a very hard thing to do, because it's very easy to promote debating in the first place, because it seems cool when these people who talk so fast can come to some like presentation debate, and then all the students say, oh, I want to talk in this fastly and this smartly, and then they come to the first meeting, and then someone says there is a debate format, and then next meeting you have like 3 people there instead of 65 you had in the first meeting. So like the promotion of debating is very important. We try doing that by sending the nicest people nicest people to the universe, like the people who have like the most charismatic people, let's say. I think it changes a great deal of how people see debate, especially like if they see it as something very nerdy and uncool and think, oh, I don't want to do this, like I want to do something cool, like university volleyball. Then you have to select the coolest members of the team, so they see, okay, these people are also nice. It's not just like a nerdy thing with, well, it is, but at least not so publicly nerdy like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something. So we need to like always have this balance. But in the same time, you don't want people who are just joining the debate club because they want to travel and go to tournaments, etc. Because they're like usually useless, because in order to get to travel you need some funding. In order to get the funding you need to be good, and if you don't work you're not good. So it's not very sustainable in the long term. So with promoting, we found out that like presentational debates are good, but we are doing them like shorter and shorter every year. We started with like almost a full debate or like a full first table and stuff, and now we are on 2-minute speeches on a very fun topic. It's important to think in advance about it being approachable to all the students, so not being too early in the morning, too late in the middle of classes. And there's also like promotional part that you have to do before. And we are so lucky because we live in the age of social media and everything, where it's very easy to promote events, and like even if you like put $2 into Facebook ads, you can get targeted ads for the students of your university or whoever you want to target with your events. So actually promoting is much easier than it was like even 5 years ago when you had to promote your high school debate club in your high school. Now you have like this huge potential, but it's also because everything has pluses and minuses, because there's a lot of stuff happening right now, especially with the in the pandemic times. It was much harder to promote events because everything is online, and it kind of loses its appeal. Every event loses its appeal when it becomes like squares of people faces talking about something on Zoom call. Thank you everyone for coming. So yeah, this is like the negative side of it all. And also, I was thinking about maybe we can talk about the organizing this during the pandemic. I don't know how was the Israeli experience with online seminars.
People were being like really good sport, and were like very willing to do the adaptation, and not like actually attending competitions, and not just telling us they're gonna attend and then like skip the morning. So people, I think, really understood that there is no no choice. We're not doing this because we're lazy. But it's been difficult. I mean, I'm slightly worried about how we're going to recruit new people next year. So, like, what were your thoughts about how you're going to recruit new debaters?
Yeah, I think we are kind of losing a generation right now. I talked to Laura about it the other day. It's kind of like inevitable that the generation, like the people who are starting university this year, will kind of have not as positive experience with starting university in general. So the ones that start debating will have the same thing. And kind of debating is always this thing that connects this super intelligent but not so social intelligent people around. And these are people who are like, it's nice for them to find friends in this way, and debate is really like a safe space for them, unlike everywhere else in the world. So I think for them, we're kind of like losing this generation if we are not able to promote it like online activities as well. What I noticed also is that people, like, I was outside of the country during the pandemic, so I was not so much in the like doing the stuff in the Croatian circuit. They were organizing like meetings online and stuff. But what I noticed is that people really were willing to work even more than when there was not, like, especially in the first, when everyone was like, oh, what am I going to do in my house for the next year? Like, do I need to buy toilet paper? What will be my activities? I'll go crazy. And then people are like, okay, Ella, can we organize an online debate tournament? I was like, of course you can. Where were you every time that we needed to organize a tournament? But there is like even more people than usual wanted to participate from the ones that we already have. But getting new ones during the pandemic was super hard. We still didn't manage like to figure out the complete strategy on how are we going to function after the school year starts. In Croatia, allegedly, their university will start normally. The people will go, well, allegedly, and that's Croatia. So maybe it already changed during this in the course of this workshop. So there is like a lot of a big chance that it will not happen, and that we need to find some alternative ways. Also, it opens a problem like funding. No one wants to pay for you to go to the online tournament, and explaining to people that you have to still pay for participating in online tournament is kind of complicated. Even though we understand completely, we also had a reg fee for everything, not for this one because this is EUDC prep. But like the regular tournaments and stuff, of course you need to pay because someone will work on that. You need to pay for the platforms, you need to pay for the tab, you need to pay for 1,000 stuff. But when you come to some kind of like university and say, hey, we need like 300 euros because we're going to EUDC in Astana, but it's on Zoom, they will say to me, come on, El. You're not getting the money, bye-bye. So it's opening like a whole new set of issues. I think in this case, connecting with university is probably the strongest thing that we all can do, because they will also have to manage this generation of new students that are starting to study without actually being there physically. So because they will do that, they kind of could, if they want, offer a sort like all the other clubs online. Of course, some clubs are like the dancing club, the football club are not going to happen. But debate club, because it can be online, we are planning to contact our faculties to like talk about promoting and then like doing fun video stuff. But it's hard because then you have to meet and accept these new members into your clubs, and you don't actually get to see them, just like the thumbnails. And there's a huge potential of this like generation of debaters really just like us losing it completely. The other thing I wanted to talk about was like division of labor inside of the organization. Like there's always this, as I told a million times in the course of this workshop, you will do all the work, no one will do anything. But there is like some ways in which we tried to force people to work more. But in the end, like there always needs to be one person that will pull and that will supervise. Because if there's not this person, the things will not get done. Unfortunately, it's the human mentality, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we tried to forcing people to work. The structure of the organization goes like this. There is a executive, or like, how do you call it in English, executive committee, a 3-person executive committee, let's say, president, vice president, and the secretary. And there is 3 little groups inside of the organization. Every person of the each member of the executive committee is working with one of these groups. Our groups are for finance, logistics, and education. The education group they organize all the courses that we have in special universities. They organize we have one course that is called like it's like intermediate and advanced track. We have them centralized with us because we don't have enough people from all to have like advanced track. In every of the university we have one that is centralized. They do this. They talk to all kind of other educational institutions we work with. They organize seminars, they organize, not really organized, but when we need some trainings, they provide trainings, they do tournament lists, they do applications for tournaments, they do qualifications, so they do all kind of like everything that has to do with like debating itself, and then like when it comes to tournaments, everything that has to do with finding people who want to go to tournaments, making sure they're applied for these tournaments, etc., etc. So we try to centralize this as well, especially when it comes to IVs and stuff. We let people apply by themselves, but we prefer always knowing who is going from Croatia or Zagreb to a certain tournament because it's easier for us to promote it like this, etc. Then we have a logistics team. Logistics team, the one no one wants to be in, the classic. The logistic team has to organize all the bureaucracy to deal with the organization. So every year we have some kind of obligations towards state, towards university, towards city. They need to fill out this papers. They organize tournaments that we do. So both local and international tournament, Zagreb Open, that we do every year, and they organize it completely. Of course, they find we in the logistics team always have to find some other people when we are doing big events, because 3 people or like 5, the most, are not enough in many cases. And they also do some kind of funding. They don't actually fundraise, that's the finance team, but they do like write projects and stuff when we are applying for some kind of grants. They are the ones that will write the application and think about the project, etc. Also, they will coordinate with education sometimes on this, but rarely, because education people care about debating only. And then the third one is the finance team, and they do fundraising, and they do all the accountants obligations and stuff. In general, I think this division can be applied in many organizations, because these are kind of like the 3 big areas, but there's also like many alternative ways to organize, depending on what you need. What we found useful is that because we have this one person from executive board that already kind of accepted like responsibility by being in the executive board, it's easier for them to coordinate their smaller groups, and then for like the president of the organization, that she doesn't have to coordinate like every single person in the NGO, but just the 3 of them that are then doing. So divisions of all kind are very, of course, very useful. Supervised. So I'm thinking about like, is there something else about dividing work, except that work needs to be divided when there is a lot of it, and there's always a lot of it, and it's hard to force people to work. Motivation, cohesion. Do you have some questions? How are you, like, because you don't have a central, like formal central organization, more informal, do you like, how does division function like in the debate clubs itself?
For us, every like debate society does the finances for themselves. Like usually it's related to the university. Some gets funding from the students' body. Some gets funding from the university, from like the dean of students. My society is actually considered a sports team, which is really funny. Like access to the gym and everything. It's really, really weird. But
the debate in gym. Yeah. Spy around.
So finances is done independently by society, and I think every society has like their own structure. I know that some societies have like a person dedicated to like newbies and to integrate them into the society. And for some society, they have a person who's in charge of like developing their more experienced debaters, because sometimes they kind of get forgotten when you integrate the new ones. In my society, I'm trying to remember what we had. We had like one part was like relationship with the university. the other one was like professional development, and one person was like in charge with of like relationship with the entire circuit, like make sure people register the competition on time, and like bidding for like hosting nationals and this kind of thing. So I think these are the divisions.
You bid to host nationals. That's really cool. Do you have to prepare the whole bid booklet and everything? Is it similar to
UDC? We actually have 5 like official competition. We have like an entire calendar of competitions, which is pretty much stays the same every year. So we have 5 official competitions where society bid to host. So it's like national, freshmen or newbies, nationals, and 2 other, like one in English, like prep for World, prep for Euros, and we have like a meeting to approve those bids, and then like we know that we have at least 5 big competitions that like Israeli debaters can participate, because they're in Hebrew, like most of them are in Hebrew. So yeah, we actually have like a small bidding process.
That's really cool.
But it's a lot easier than the Euros are worth it.
Oh, of course. And I guess it's not 2 years in advance, but like bidding for the year, the whole petition.
Yeah, like next week we're approving the bids for like 2020, 2021.
The next school year.
Yeah.
I think this type of like let's say recognizing what the circuit needs and then acting on it are the most like useful stuff. I'm not sure, like, because we are recording this, people that are watching are maybe from very different circuits that have very different needs. I wish you would be there so we could talk about this as well. But there is always like, you know, the best probably. If you're in the circuit, you will feel what the circuit needs, like what are the things that you're missing on, or what are the things you can develop more on. And there is always like, it's always okay to like think of an extra body or something to work on the specific issues. Great, now we have construction work. My window. Bye air condition. Yeah. So we were talking about tournaments, etc. We had the same thing with like qualifications for EUDC, because we never had a need for it in general until last year, I think, until Athens, when we had like, I was shocked that like we had 8 teams that were wanting to go and we had 6 spots or something. So it's always important to think about stuff in advance. For example, that was our mistake. We didn't think about needing qualifications for UDC ever. It was like a dream that will never happen. Why would we need it? 6, blah, blah. And then when it happened, we didn't have any plan of how to organize these qualifications. We didn't like have rules for qualifications. We had to think all of this, etc. And we started qualifications before thinking about it. So that's like a lecture. There is something new pops up. It's better to be late with it and like a bit slow with it than just start, because problem is, in most cases, you will manage something and compete and maybe be a judge, and I don't know, like you will have some kind of personal connection to the debate club while doing the work. So you always have to be careful to be like objective and to keep like your like your boss persona and your debater persona apart. And it's hard, and it's also hard when other people start from other people's perspective, when they maybe think like something is not fair towards them because like you're the boss persona and the debater persona in the same time. And so it's generally useful that people start organizing stuff after they finish debating, but it's impossible in many cases because there's not enough people. And when you're like finished with school and finished with everything, you kind of don't want to go and be a president of a debate club anymore. But it's still like it needs to be at least some distance. So like when you start organizing debate club, you have to admit to yourself that your debating career is not like debating career, quote unquote, is not that important to you anymore, or that you will like be able to like have rules and like procedures for everything, so no one ever thinks something is not fair, or the organization itself doesn't suffer because we have to like fulfill two positions in the same time. There is also like a useful thing we learned too late. There is always useful to have some kind of conflict resolving procedures in place. Like we have the ethical codex that we don't still we have it, but we have to vote for it on this year's Zagreb Council or whatever. It's like basically a document that we drafted with the help of some psychologists, like educational psychologists, and with the help of some like all our other organizations' ethical codex, that basically obliges every person that is in the organization to act in respectful manner towards others. And there is like a very clear way in which, if a conflict arises, in the NGO itself, how are we solving it, so that people, you know, when they enter the organization, are already aware that if something happens, there's like a way to solve it, rather than having a problem and then be like, okay, how can we solve this without hurting anyone? And it's usually impossible, so like too late for that. So like having this type of stuff, maybe we don't think about it when we think about debate club, like, okay, we need a blackboard and a debate coach, but in general you need more stuff, like in every like with organizing everything else.
So actually like a permanent equity policy for the circuit, or?
Yeah, I think a permanent equity policy or service, or even a person that you vote for every year that is like an equity officer for the circuit is a good thing to have. I know equity is kind of like a bad word. Like it's this weird combination of like people really being into equity and really hating equity in debating today. So we kind of forget that it's not about the word equity or whatever, the equity policy of some tournament, and like you not agreeing with the equity policy of debate shit posting or whatever, like the problem people with equity have. But the general idea is that you have a lot of people in the same place, and there will be some situations that will need some solving, and there will be some situations in which people will feel bad. And I'm not claiming that it's your job as a president of your debate club to make everyone feel good 100% of time. But in some cases, when it's directly connected to debating and the work of the club, you need to have some process for solving it. And if you don't have it written out, then you have to like do it impromptu, think on the spot. And if you think on the spot, in many situations, you will do more harm than good for everyone. And you will have much more personal responsibility on this. Like it's not our ethical codex that is solving this situation. It's me, Ela, solving this situation, which means that, you know, my face comes to this. And for many people, I think that's something they don't want to deal with. And I think they're very right that they don't want to deal with, because it's hard for like managing all the relations. Because in general, in our debate clubs, okay, even if you're a president or like an older person in the club, you're still kind of friendly and friends with many of the people that are attending. So you don't want to be this person that has to tell someone that's behaving not okay, etc. So having like a permanent equity officer or a permanent equity policy really solves this, because it's not like me, Ela, is telling you you're an asshole now, but the equity policy is telling you you're an asshole. So it's like depersonalizing the conflict solving issues, which I think it's always useful. Like depersonalizing everything as much as possible in debate clubs, because there's always like it's a weird combination of business and pleasure, like debating, because people are very friendly and everyone knows each other and stuff, but in the same time there's stuff to be done. So finding a balance, I think it's the hardest part of organizing and managing debate societies.
Yeah, no, it's I completely agree, because sometimes, you know, there's a prominent debater who's misbehaving, like acting inappropriately, and like everyone's friends with him, and it's kind of like them, and it's kind of like, what are you gonna do now? So it's a good thought to have something like some of the procedure.
Yep, and then also in like the structure, there's this problem if you have like, you know, because good debaters are good in debating, but they're not necessarily good in like lifing skills. So when you have a lot of noobs coming in, they will look at them like look up to them, which is normal, of course, because you want to do debate. Someone is better in debating than you are. You think, okay, I want to be like this person, and then like in many cases they start copying other behavioral patterns, not only like trying to make arguments the same way you do, but also trying to behave the same way when you do. And when you have a person, so I think it's actually kind of good that the best debater in the club is not the president of the club, like the best debater, the one that has the most I don't know, won tournaments, etc. Because then it kind of concentrates the power. You get all the soft power by being the best debater and everyone wants to be like you, and then you get the hard power, which is like, I am managing this organization. Oh, someone is waiting for us. Imperial B. Also, I will check, there was a Q&A form. Hi. Can you hear us? Okay, let's see. They can. I'm just gonna check the Q&A form because maybe someone posted some questions we can answer right now. Zagreb EUDC, that's the name of this event. Oh, I don't have request. I'm so sorry. I'm just gonna text Matt. Although, oh, someone left. Oh, it's over. No worries. I'll catch the recording. It's not over, Chris. Come back. Bye, bye, Chris. I'm reading the chat. So I'll just wait for Matt to let me know if there's some questions in the Q&A form. Do you have some other topics you want to talk about while we're still here and recorded?
I just wanted to ask, like, how balanced is your society in like men versus women, and if like you know, like men versus women, and if you notice, like, because we had a discussion in our circuit a couple of years ago of how do we maintain good female debaters or good like women debaters, because some societies have issue with that. So I kind of wanted to see what you thought from your experience.
A hard one for us, a painful one for us in some ways. So we have a great balance of genders in high school debating. I would say like, okay, now this will sound horrible. It's not the balance actually. We have great number. There's more women in high school debating than men, both in organizing, both in debating, both in like all the areas, coaching. But now, is this Emma Lucas? Shouldn't she be in her own workshop? Okay. But when it comes to university debate, we have more men for some reason. And especially people who stay are men. So what we are trying to do, because it's kind of funny that we have people organizing stuff for women and then their women are organizing stuff for a bunch of men. They're just coming to debate tournaments and stuff. So what we are trying to do is like pair in pro-ams. I think that's like helpful to give the strongest debaters to like women OSs and stuff. Now the boys will kill me for this, for telling this in public. But I don't think, because we're still so small, that like the WDC rules are not applied for us. For example, we don't have, because we're too small to have this type of balance. We don't have to worry about that too much from this type of side. What we're trying to like achieve is to look as a very like welcoming society for everyone that wants to join, like people with disabilities, etc. We try to accommodate everyone that gets in contact with us to be able to come to and do debates. But we don't really have a policy in place that help us attract more women. The only things we have are like informal informal gatherings. Hi, are you not on your workshop? Is your workshop done? Okay, then we can finish also without Matt getting her. No, no, no. We're also just chatting about balance, gender balance in debate societies. I think maybe Netherlands is better in this than we are, like judging by the number of successful women in debating you had in the last 5 years. How did you do it? Let us know.
Oh, women. I don't know. I think that what you said about the risk of having women organize a bunch of stuff but then not speak is an actual, like, I think that's a big issue. Specifically women who don't come from a schools background. And I think basically what we did, and what we're trying to do is have women who are successful and kind of give them the responsibility to include people. And that means that if I go to tournaments, I usually go with female fresher, like, and I do pro-am, I'll go with female freshers, or I go out of my way to make sure you talk to people and stuff like that. And I think that the issue there becomes with that strategy, if it works, if you already have a lot of women, but it's a lot more difficult if you don't have those. And I think it's really about also talking to other circuits and having men take responsibility. And I think that's the interesting stuff. It's always senior women or like older experienced women who have to take responsibility for it, because the men just don't really necessarily take it. So I think that it's about, and that's why I like the WUDC rule, even though it sometimes, I understand it gives issues, but I think if you ask them, all men say, no, I care so much, like women should debate. Like, what have you done in the last month that helped women debate? And all of a sudden they're really quiet. So I think it's a lot about, and it can also be asking women from other circuits, because I think that that is something that people should feel free to do. I've spoken with women in the Netherlands from different societies who said, we have this really cool fresher, but we don't really have women who can speak. Do you want to do it? And she doesn't know you and she's afraid to ask, but like, I'm this old person that can ask you. And I think that's something, like, if people are watching, I'm sure they can ask everyone, like, just very often people will be super willing to help. And that's where I think senior members, whether they're male or female in societies, have to step up, because it's just easier to ask great female speakers if you're older yourself or more experienced yourself. And even if you're a man, like, take the responsibility to then say, this female fresher, I'm going to link her up with someone else. I might not be a woman, I might not be the one to mentor her, but I know this other person from a different country or a different circuit, and I think that's really useful. And of course, having good people like you train good people works.
And also, I think there's a huge part of this is forcing good debaters in your circuit to still do stuff. Like, you're not allowed to be a pretty face on the screen. You can ask Laurentin how many times I forced them to write something or like to do something, because like this division, like people who are not good in debating will work and people who are good in debating will not work. It's very unhealthy for the circuit in general. Everyone needs to contribute, and maybe just because you're like not the best debater in your circuit, so you cannot, like, when it comes to discussing the best CEO strategies on round 4 of UDC, you maybe not have something to contribute. There's still something you can contribute definitely in the society. So it's very important to force both good debaters to like engage in non-debating activities and like to do something for the organization, not just like winning tournaments and getting funding. Like, of course, it's very useful when they win tournaments and get us funding, but I still like need you to do something else. And I think that motivates younger members to see, okay, so they're the best they can be in like our circuit, but they're still forced to write something or like to come to the meeting or like to organize a tournament or to do whatever you want them to do, like coach someone, etc. I think it helps with like general motivation in the organization, definitely. But,
I completely agree. I think sometimes, especially in my society, stronger debaters tend to feel like they're big fish in a small pond. And then like we have those amazing other societies, which is really tempting to just go and practice there. But kind of like they should be able to be there also for like the freshers and show them like the commitment to being in practices and being like a good members of the debate society. And I think it really, really motivates the fresher ones, that to see that they have someone who's not only good but also like present in the society and active within the society.
Exactly, and there's always like the thing we talked about before, how people, when they're going to tournaments and activities, they're not really aware of what's behind this. Kind of putting this in the first place and like explaining to, like, we try to do this thing when we try to make novice members of specific debate clubs join the big organization, like to become officially members of the NGO and stuff. And then we try to do this introduction meeting, and then I do my best to show how bureaucracy is not so boring, although it is. Don't tell anyone. You know, there's like including them like specifically and explaining the what things are part of this like big organization, and what do we need to do on daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, weekly basis in order for all this to function. It's very important to make people aware of this, even like older debaters, because in many cases they're just there for like 7 years doing tournaments and like never asking who pays for this, like how did we get the funding for this last 10 years, etc. So like maybe being more having direct communication. And then it's also good, like what we talked about before, also the informal events, like use the informal events to do the formal stuff, at least the mobilizing people and like explaining about the organization and the structures. You can do it in a friendly way over beer. Want to talk about structure of my NGO on this social?
Always works better if there's like a casual.
Yeah, I'm setting to it.
Cool.
Okay, I think we covered a lot of stuff in this 2.5 people workshop. Not, you're not the half, Emma. We just had some people come and go, so I count them as a half. Hopefully this will be useful for everyone watching. If not, don't hate us because of it. Just text us how we can be improved in making workshops useful. We're gonna share some materials definitely, like on our training program in the future, also regarding organizing debate societies. So keep tuned. And I will stop recording now because this feels so awkward when it's recorded.